Hey pals, look what I got. Hi, Shanna Rowe Jackson here from Caution Artist at Play. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be playing with some of the Ohuhu alcohol markers for the first time. I am super excited about this. These are the Ohuhu Honolulu series, and this is the 48 pastel color set. Let's take a look at these babies. Look how pretty these markers are. For those of you who have been around for a while, you know that I recently put out a post asking all of you what markers I should try if I start working with alcohol markers in my sketchbook. I am somebody who typically does not work with alcohol-based markers because they don't tend to be light fast and I don't want to use them in work that I plan to sell. But I have been working in my sketchbook more, and I didn't want to use my more archival markers in my sketchbook because I don't plan on selling that work, and if I do, it's just going to be prints anyways. And so I thought it was time to get some alcohol-based markers, and I put a post out there and asked all of you what you thought, and overwhelmingly, like, the majority of you were saying Ohuhu. Now, if that wasn't exciting enough as it was, Ohuhu actually reached out to me around the same time. It was actually really creepy timing. I feel like it might have even been the same day, though I don't think they saw my post. And so it was really interesting timing. They reached out to me and asked if I would be interested in trying this set of markers, and I said, well, funny you should ask. All my friends have been saying that these are wonderful markers, so yes, I would. So I want to thank Ohuhu for sending me these markers. That being said, this will still be 100% my opinion. You all know how it works, but I am not very experienced with alcohol-based markers. I haven't used any in years, and so we're going to keep that in mind as well. So this is the set. Oh, they are so beautiful. It comes with this to put in between the pages, which is really exciting because I know that alcohol-based markers do tend to bleed. I see there is a colorless blender here. Let's just take a look at the colors. I'm not going to necessarily read them all off to you right now. I will be swatching these in just a moment, but this feels really good in the hand. And it says Ohuhu art marker, and I specifically requested that I have the fine nib and the brush end because I know myself and I know I'm never going to use a chisel nib. And so we've got the brush end here and it marks it right here. And then we have that fine nib there, which is really nice. They do have that alcohol scent to them, which is, you know, to be expected. Let's see. And again, most of you are probably more familiar with these markers than I am, hence the fact that you all said, hey, get these. There were a few other good options out there, though, too. So I will take a look at that post if I decide to get more. I also like how it has this gray stripe here to kind of indicate where the fine end is as well, in case we miss that part. All right, I'm really excited. Bear with me while I play around in the sketchbook. I am going to do some swatching and then I'll come back. And then after that, of course, I will get into the sketchbook and draw a fun piece. These colors make me feel really cozy. And so I'm thinking about doing an illustration of maybe like a teacup or something like that. I don't know. We'll see. All right, I'm going to kind of sort these by color, I think, and then I'm going to swatch. Let's get to it. Okay, so here are the swatches. I love the colors. They're so much fun. I am going to probably bring in some fine liners for details and things like that, just so I can have a little bit of contrast since these are all fairly light colors. Of course, first thing I swatched, I messed up because I didn't realize that one was Y030 and the other one was YR030. Of course. So that's going to bug me until eternity. Okay, so I'm not sure if I'm going to work in my sketchbook or if I'm actually going to just work on cardstock. just because the pages I'm on in my sketchbook are rough right now because it alternates between smooth and rough, and it's on the rough side, and I prefer to paint on that. And yeah, I don't want to go out of order because that would make me twitch as well. And so even though these are mainly going to be used for sketchbook, I might end up just trying it out on cardstock for right now. We'll see. All right, I'm going to get to work. Surprise! I ended up working in my sketchbook after all. This is the Jane Davenport watercolor art journal, and as I mentioned before, it does have some smooth paper and some rough paper, and this is the rough side. And I know that these probably would do much better on smooth paper, but there's going to be times in my sketchbook where I want to use markers and it's going to happen to be the rough side of the paper, and so I figured I might as well just do it now and see how it goes, and it actually worked out surprisingly well considering there is a slight texture to the paper. I was really happy with how these worked on this paper. And I basically just sketched out a fun little teacup. This is based off a teacup that I used to have. I don't know what happened to it, but I won it at work for some like prize during Employee Appreciation Week or something like that. And it has a nice quote on it that says, "Cherish yesterday, dream tomorrow, live today," by Richard Bach. And I just thought that that was like a really nice touch. And I had actually done a story on my Instagram forever ago with this where I took a picture of it and said, "Wisdom from a teacup." So I thought that would be a fun sketchbook theme. So that's basically what I did. The reference that I had was not that great, but I, played around and changed things up a little bit. And I have to admit, I did not think this out as well as I should have because I didn't think of the background ahead of time, and I always think of the background ahead of time, so that's gonna be the worst part. I also added in some cookies because I like to have cookies with my hot beverages. So now I'm laying in that background with this fun kind of peachy color, which is funny because my husband and I also just bought some paint to redo our entryway, and it's very similar to this color, and I didn't even realize it until I was editing this video. Then I added in some hearts because I love tea and I love cookies. I'm not a huge fan at how well I blended the background, but to be fair, I was really rushed, and this is a rough paper, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that I'm not used to working with alcohol markers, and I'm also, like I said, I was kind of just laying in the background in a hurry, and so. But the markers are nice and juicy. I had a lot of fun blending them out, especially in the smaller areas where I wasn't getting impatient. And then, of course, I did bring in some fine liners, as I mentioned, because I needed to have some darkness. I need to get more colors of these because it was not easy to get a full range of values, which I expected. They did layer well, though, and I was able to make darker areas by layering them because they are very transparent. But I did have to bring in some fine liners, and I also decided to bring in some other items as well, such as a colored pencil and a gel pen, because I wanted to see how well these worked for mixed media, because my main plan is to use these for base layers. And so, while this is probably not my favorite illustration in this sketchbook, I did have a really good time, and I feel like I learned a lot about these markers, and I got a good feel for them just to see how I'll be able to use them in the future. And that was my whole plan with this anyway. And my little wonky teacup, it's all lopsided, but I do think it's kind of an endearing illustration, and I do love tea, and so it's very fitting for me. Overall, I had a really, really good time. It was very relaxing, and that's what I expect out of a sketchbook session, and so I think these are going to be perfect for that. Of course, I did take precautions because I didn't want to deal with it bleeding through, so I knew it was going to be ghosting on the other side, but I made sure to only color on one side of the sketchbook spread this time because the back side of the left side of my sketchbook spread has another illustration that I didn't want to get ruined. And I know that I could have gessoed this, but I kind of wanted to see how well this paper held up to these in the future, and I'll just paint something on the other side with an opaque medium to cover the ghosting in the future. Okay, so here is my finished little illustration. I had a lot of fun with this. I don't know about you, but I really want some tea now and some cookies. I mean, I always want cookies, but Yeah, this was a lot of fun. This obviously is not my typical style, but this is what I come to the sketchbook for. I come to play around, do fun illustrations. I'm not here to make my biggest masterpieces. And this was a great way to practice with these since it had been so long since I had used any alcohol-based markers. And I think I got a pretty good feel for them. I really thoroughly enjoyed them. I think that they were nice and juicy and they blended well. Obviously, not as much in the background, but that's more of a skill level thing, and I kind of rushed through that, so I think that's more to do with me than it is to do with the markers, because all in all, I think that these worked really, really well. And of course, I actually used kind of the rougher side of my paper, which I normally wouldn't do for marker. I think these would blend a lot better on the smoother side. My sketchbook is set up so that every other sketchbook spread is rough paper, smooth paper, rough paper, smooth paper, and I didn't really want to go out of order, so I ended up just doing it on the rough side. I thought that that would also kind of give me an idea of how well these will do if I end up needing to use it on the rough side of this paper again later on. And so I think that it worked really well considering it was on rough paper, and I'm really excited to use these more in the future. I think the colors are beautiful. I think down the line I am going to get more colors. I did bring in some of the Sakura Micron pens to do some fine lining to make things pop, which I do a lot in illustrations anyways. I also brought in my Uniball Signo and a white colored pencil. This was the Derwent Drawing Chinese White. It's hard to see now because it's so itty bitty because I use these pencils a lot. But I thought that that would give me a great idea of how well these worked with mixed media, and all of these went over it really well. These are a pigment-based, water-based pen, and so these went over the alcohol ink perfectly fine, and the gel pen glided over it beautifully, which is fantastic considering I was on the rough side of the paper. And then of course the colored pencil went down just fine over it, because especially with these being pastels, I never will probably use these just alone because there's not going to be enough shift in value. And so I thought that that was a great way to test that, and I'm really happy with that. I often like to use markers for mixed media anyways, and you know, as just a fun base to put down for my other supplies. And so these work perfectly for that as well. All in all, I am really happy with them. Let's see how much they seeped through the paper. I put a piece of cardstock on the other side. So as you can see, there is quite a bit of ghosting on this side. And this paper, I don't even remember what the weight is of this paper. It's pretty thick, but I put this on the other side because it's kind of a big sketchbook, and I didn't think that this would be enough coverage, but I really love that they include this, and that's going to work perfectly for smaller sketchbooks. So it really only a little bit where I was putting the shadow in down here showed through to the actual paper. So this page actually probably would have been fine. And then I plan on probably just painting over this with like gouache or something else anyway, something opaque that will cover that anyway. So, and I can gesso it if I really need to. But yeah, so that is that. That was my first experience using the Ohuhu art markers, and my first time using alcohol-based markers in a long time. And I really enjoyed it, and I will be using these for future sketchbook adventures. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you to all of you who had suggested these to me, and thank you Ohuhu for sending these to me because it was perfect timing. All right, I will see you next week. You have a fantastic day. Bye. Wait, don't go away just yet. If you liked this video, you're sure to like this one too. Also, don't forget to hit subscribe.